Hi everyone, welcome to the webinar, the next phase of IT consumerization in MDM. Thank you for registering and attending to this webinar now. This webinar is hosted by ManageEngine, and today we feature guest speaker Mr. Christian Kane from Forrester. For those who don't know about Christian Kane, he's currently working as an analyst serving infrastructure and operations professionals. And helps Forrester clients develop and improve their desktop and mobile strategy. His research spans mobile hardware, mobile operating systems, mobile device management, mobile application management, enterprise application stores, mobile and bring your own device policy, and much more. So today's webinar will deal with the consumerization trends and how the definition of work is changing, and the IT trends and the future of MDM, and much more, so on. So the exciting news and insights would be given by Mr. Christian Kane. So Christian Kane is going to start talk about more about this topic now. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks. And give me 1 sec. I'll just share the slides here. There we go. Oh, sorry, folks. 1 second. Sorry, I'm having a bit of a challenge here. All right. There we go. So yeah, thanks everybody for joining us today, and really appreciate it. So we're going to talk a little bit more really around what we're seeing in terms of trends with the workforce, as well as with mobile management as a whole. And where I really like to start is actually in this slide here to talk about really the challenges that we see the IT dealing with, and then a lot of that has to do with the fact that really there's been a shift in perception and expectations around technology, around devices, and what's accessible. And so definitely something where we see quite a few people who've really come into their workforce and found that the technology they have there really doesn't meet their needs, or they feel at least they have better technology at home. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they've really gotten their own devices well before they've entered into the workforce. They have their expectations around what they can do and what they can't on those devices set well before they do enter into the workforce. And so what we find is that actually many employees feel that they're underserved from a technology perspective in terms of what they get from IT or from their companies. And so that's a real perception that IT is being challenged with right now, because they're having to really go and figure out how to serve these employees better, how to really break from something like a one-size-fits-all model into something that really brings much more contextually relevant technology to those employees. And we look at really what we see in terms of employees and what they're using, and it's not necessarily that they're no longer using their desktops or their PCs, but they're actually just adding in more devices. Now we see smartphones and tablets entering into the workforce, and these are additional devices. But not only are they additional devices in that scenario, but we also see that there's absolutely, sorry, slides are jumping here, but we also see that there's additional operating systems as well. And so those operating systems are adding an additional they can provide in terms of
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy. Welcome to the webinar. You have entered as an organizer and may now speak to any other organizers or panelists on the line. When you are ready to begin the presentation, press the Start Broadcast button on the GoToWebinar control panel to allow all attendees to hear you. This system will notify you once you begin your broadcast. Welcome to GoToWebinar, Webinars Made Easy.
Struggling to figure out what's the best, where their focus should be, how they break again from this one-size-fits-all model, and really into something that can be much more contextually relevant for employees. And we're really just hitting the tip of the iceberg here in terms of additional devices. There's big trends around wearables, and plenty of companies and employees and job types really will leverage some of those devices, and they'll need access to applications and certain data components or back-end infrastructure as well. And so really, we see companies as they're getting prepared for a mobile strategy, trying to get better about device management and mobile management as a whole, really starting maybe with just the smartphones and the tablets component, but absolutely thinking well beyond that and really trying to make sure they prepare themselves. And, I talked a little bit about complexity in terms of the number of devices and form factors, but it's more than just that and just the platforms. We see that, 37% of employees are working from 3 or more locations, and, they use 7 or more apps for work. And again, that's on 3 or more devices. So there's many layers of complexity, and also, these might not be necessarily provided by IT or owned by IT. And so we see many companies really trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we set policy that allows employees to use the tools they need to get their jobs done, but that actually really can deliver on them and won't jeopardize us in terms of security, or won't put any of our confidential information or our customer information at risk. And that makes it a very sort of daunting task for many IT organizations, and why we see so many companies who are really struggling with how they support a greater mobile capacity in terms of their workforce. And a little bit how they're starting to do that is really looking at the different types of workers and different use cases that really go into this, because we see that business decision makers really have very different needs than IT or maybe a task-based worker or really any other worker there. With maybe a business decision maker, they want efficient employees, they want line of business applications for them, and they want that with a good experience and in a way that can connect to all of their customers. And for IT, they're still having to manage limited budgets, limited headcount from support, but they also need to make sure they have a scalable solution and that they're minimizing costs and ensuring security and compliance where necessary. And you look at then a third scenario with this task worker, and what we see is, well, those are very different scenarios. Maybe it's a rugged environment that they need, or maybe it's somebody like a home health care worker who needs a specific application, really isn't necessarily going to be coming back to the office all that often, and needs to be able to get the access to the right information in locations outside of the corporate office, but maybe that's sensitive information, so they need the ability to have the proper security restraints around that too. And so this is an enormous amount of challenge that we see companies going through. But what we see is that they're actually surveying their workforces much more often. So they're going in and asking, all of the employees really, where do you work from? How often do you work from these locations? What apps do you use today? What do you like about what you get today? What don't you like? What would you like, in the future as well? And so all of these things are absolutely very big, helpful kind of guides for companies to be able to really segment their workforce based on those answers and create these specific technology profiles and also policy profiles for those employees. So you see here we have sort of just different personas I've kind of thrown up, and their need for a laptop might be different, or their need for a smartphone might be different, again, based on that job. But we can also see that companies can use this to prioritize by initiative. Well, if email and team sites are high priority across the board, regardless of the device type that employees use, well, then we need to make sure that those services are available across the board, but again, in a secure way. And the employees have that right access and right policy in place that maybe a personally owned device or something in a BYOD program can actually get that right access there. So these sort of segmentation projects going on we see as being incredibly valuable to companies as they're trying to build mobile policies and mobile strategies to really fit alongside their mobile device management solutions. And all of this is with the goal of workforce enablement. We want people to have better tools for the jobs that they do. And we want them to be engaged in that technology, engaged in their work, and we want to provide ways for them to do that and engage with our customers. And jump here to the next slide, and I mentioned a little bit about mobile policy, but it's actually an extremely important piece. And when you go and adopt a mobile device management solution, which we see many companies do, well, you have the ability to enforce policy, but you really need to make some decisions ahead of that, really along the lines of eligibility, maybe who can use which device and which systems do they have access to, maybe who qualifies for reimbursement if it is a BYOD program that you've got launched. Well, what about support and access? What can we do in terms of IT? What should we be doing? Should we really be focusing on hardware support for mobile devices in a BYOD scenario? And most companies have said probably not. The carriers actually do that better. And what do we do about access to specific applications and backend systems? All of these things really need to have a conversation and a decision made for the company to decide really what's best, both for, again, those corporate interests, but also the employees and their ability to get work done. And so we see mobile policies really and mobile strategy definitions going hand in hand with mobile device management deployment in order to really have a solid strategy here, a solid foundation to build off of. And now this doesn't mean that you need to have a policy or a strategy that covers all employees right off the bat. Many companies start with smaller segments. They'll start with really maybe sales and executives or manager level, and slowly but surely expand into different roles or segments as they get more comfortable, as they start building out their policy and tweak it as they go. So this is definitely something that's been taken often as a phased approach, definitely something where it's not necessarily you're just going to go out there and provide access to everything right off the bat. So take your time with it and build and make sure that you're evolving it consistently, because this isn't something that's going to be a set it and forget it type of thing. You're going to be consistently evolving this as more platforms get supported, as more data access gets available or applications get available, and form factors as well. So definitely keep that in mind. And again, I'll mention too, we're going to definitely take more questions at the end. So please, feel free to submit those via chat, and we'll be able to deal with them when we get to the end. So I talked about a little bit about policy and kind of strategy and segmentation, and all of those are really what we see going into kind of the initial challenges around mobile and mobile management as a whole. We see that you need the BYOD strategy and structure. You need to figure out eligibility and access and policy creation and device support. But very quickly, companies do that and maybe give some like device support, maybe some email access, and employees and managers are very quickly asking for more application access as well. And so with that in mind, we see really that these advanced challenges are popping up more and more, really around application management, around file sync and share and collaboration options, as well as then security and security for those apps and security of that data. So this is something where companies are challenged with. When we're looking at a segmented workforce, we see that really those employees, just like they need different devices, they might need different applications or different access and different support options too. And applications are something, or especially mobile applications or mobile access to applications, is something where many companies are still very much trying to figure that out. They're not actually leveraging a whole slew of applications that they're rolling out. Usually maybe it's just a handful, maybe targeted at specific employees. And what we're kind of seeing is that more and more employees who are aware of the consumer app stores are speaking to their peers more and more about what apps they use for work and what they find helpful in their day-to-day. That knowledge and that access via, again, consumer app stores is really creating a kind of a challenge for IT, because there's already this existing app gap where we see many companies have invested quite a bit in computer applications or PC applications. That's really where the majority of applications lie, and they're available there. But we don't see that many mobile applications that are available today in most companies. And so employees, what they're doing is they're self-serving. They're filling in some of those gaps. Not all of them, because not all of those are available, or not all apps that an employee can get off the Consumer App Store actually do have access to backend data that they might need, but they're at least filling in where they can. And this is a good and a bad thing. So A, it's definitely good because employees are able to tell then or show IT basically by what's installed on their device what apps they like, what they would like IT to provide to them potentially, or at least what they would like IT to sanction. And at the same time, it's also showing potential security risks too, because things like Dropbox get adopted by employees because they don't have file sync and share maybe options provided to them by their company. And so with that in mind, they use Dropbox and they put corporate data inside of it. And obviously that's a risk for the company because they don't have insight or control over what's going in there and who has access to it necessarily. It's left up to that individual. And if you're really in an industry where you have regulatory or any kind of audit and compliance components there, then that's a significant challenge. And so really this app gap is a place where we see a lot of companies struggling today and going through a little bit of paralysis, I would say, because they haven't been able to prioritize which employee groups or which segments they should focus on, and they haven't necessarily done good data collection or had working groups or even just gone out and asked those workers, what apps do you use today, what would you like to use, and what can we provide more? And so this is going to be very kind of important to any mobile strategy and advanced mobile strategy that goes on, and for any company that's really struggling with this app gap that we see. And in terms of the applications that we see employees using, I mentioned some things like file sync and share, and obviously email and calendar contacts, communications tools lead the charge. But what's most interesting to me is actually here where we see really 32% of employees are actually using specific line of business applications. And so that's a great turnaround and does show really what we see with a lot of progressive firms is that they're really trying to build and adopt targeted applications that fit certain tasks or certain worker profiles. And I think we expect to see this only increasing as time goes on, as more companies either start making these decisions, get some of this data behind their decisions, and then are able to act on it, whether it be developing their own apps or going through maybe a third party and purchasing an application. And so when we kind of look at the app gap, or where I highlighted that before, with some of the, we overlay it with some of the employee segments or personas that we create. And this is really just a simple exercise where we take 2 data points, and that's how many locations do you work in and how many applications do you use. And what we find is that even just with this very simple example here, that there are very different profiles that get created. And so somebody who we have here in the top right, Michael, who's our mobile professional, they work in many locations. They're using many applications. We see sales and marketing fitting in quite a bit into them. Anybody who's really traveling in those roles, probably using a lot of collaboration applications, usually using some Office or at least collaboration and, say, editing tools and presentation tools. And that's very different than maybe somebody like Darlene in the bottom left here, who uses few applications and uses and works in few locations. Probably more of that dedicated practitioner who is really, and it could even be maybe somebody who works outside of the office in a single place, has a single task to do, but they still might need a tablet. They still might not use a PC all the time. They might use something else. And so even just with this simple example, you can not only see and sort of understand what that job is and what technology requirements there might be, but even if you look on the right here, we can actually also see which applications they use today in terms of on PCs. And we can say, okay, well, what applications do they have available now on smartphones and tablets they use? And maybe we can find some ways to mobilize or find alternatives for the PC apps to make them available on mobile devices as well. And so, again, just a simple exercise here, but definitely something where even asking simple questions like how many locations and how many applications do you use can actually be pretty powerful in terms of deciding kind of where to go next and what to prioritize. I've talked a lot about kind of the enablement component, and security of apps and data, and also security of devices is still the number one and two challenges here. And actually, this is the first year in doing this survey that we actually saw securing apps and data go above device security. Now, again, it's not that device security is going away. Obviously, the numbers are quite close here. But it really means that this is kind of the complete picture. And this is also how we see mobile device management evolving as well. We see actually that realistically, you need to be able to, and companies increasingly will have requirements around actually providing the right applications in a secure way. And I'll jump to the next one here. And also just to put it in perspective as well in terms of priorities. We asked the same groups, how important are each of the initiatives in terms of, and this is just showing the high and critical priorities. But we find that implementing and expanding mobile security solutions, as well as implementing a comprehensive MDM solution to address both company-owned and employee-owned devices and mobile devices are really the top two here. And that's sort of no surprise. My inquiries, my conversations with clients are dominated by a lot of this. Companies really trying to get a handle on this. So these are the solutions that they're looking to leverage, and they're looking to extend them, again, beyond just that basic device and email access to really look at applications and data. Because they might start with an MDM tool to really focus around, say, device TIN and remote wipe and lock and device configuration. But again, very quickly they get requests from employees and managers and even executives to enable all of the work that they do or would like to do. And that means more than just devices. It means cloud services and data access. It means applications. Workforce enablement is about getting the right tools to that employee. And tools doesn't just mean devices. And so that's a really important component to get beyond. And so when I look at the kind of emerging mobile management market, what I see is really that MDM has been that number one, that has been that kind of primary focus. But what we're seeing is that app management components are slowly but surely coming into the fold, and they're starting to be more and more relevant to customers overall. And right alongside sort of that app management, app security component is the App Store. It's a way for employees to get those apps and a way for a company to distribute them, and also have a self-service access model too. And as we sort of build out some of these components, we see mobile authentication being relevant in certain scenarios, as well as, again, that secure content sharing. And now this doesn't necessarily mean you need to get all of this from the same vendor. The MDM and the app management components increasingly become more and more intertwined. But even just a partnership in these scenarios does work. But really the most important part here when you're looking to a vendor is to really not only sort of match up with where you are right now, but you also want to look to vendors who are really going to actually be your trusted advisors in this, ones who are able to then share, customer success stories, but also maybe give you examples of, or help you craft that mobile strategy and help you maybe jump from that kind of initial just MDM kind of piece of the strategy into that more evolved app management realm too. So you're able to bring the two together. And I think that's where we see a lot of companies really focusing on, vendors who are able to deliver on those for them and articulate how their strategy can evolve over time and where their partnerships are extending to as well to think about some of these things moving forward. And ultimately, when I look at kind of what the path to enablement looks like and what the trajectory that we see most companies on, is really they start again. I've talked about that smartphone access, that email contacts calendar, and we see most companies somewhere in between this MDM phase and this MAM phase. And that MAM phase being we're bringing in more devices, we're allowing more applications to have access on them, maybe access to back-end systems. We're starting to get a little bit better and treat these devices really as primary computing devices for employees. This is their primary tool to get their work done. And that's going to extend even further to really, so it really looks like, no matter who you are in the company, you're going to have a device, whether it be a PC or a mobile device or something else. We see absolutely that the goal and the vision for the future is that really all devices are managed centrally, and you have policies in place that are able to understand the differences between those devices, but more importantly, understand the differences between context. So who is that person? Where are they working from? What are they trying to access? And so all of those things are really going to have to go into the future vision or the future management security tools that we see. So just to keep in mind, when you're building out your mobile strategy, you really need to keep all of these things in mind. Now, you don't necessarily have to do all of them right out of the gate, but you definitely have to understand that this is going to be part of your vision, your future vision moving forward, and that you're going to want paths to get to each of these places. Again, it's not a set it and forget it type thing. It's really an evolution. So make sure that you have a BYOD strategy in place or you're considering it. Look towards security and management options for all devices, as well as applications and data. File sync and share is relevant to many, many employees. So look for ways to protect data but still offer them those types of tools. And when you're doing this, it's really important not to just kind of think about it in traditional IT silos around, what are the benefits that we get? Oh, it's a central console. We're able to manage it. Maybe we're keeping our costs low. It's going to be incredibly important and more important moving forward to be able to communicate to others, whether it be managers, whether it be the business or steering committees, what the value that IT is delivering to individual groups. And so those segments, again, become very, very important when we're talking about, what is the value that the sales channel gets? What is the value that maybe, or the value that we deliver in terms of back office support? Have we improved customer service because we've given more tools there? And, what about individual line of businesses? So make sure that you can really articulate specific examples, because that's going to help communicate the success already, but that you're not, taking into account that you're not at any kind of end game here. This is going to be continuous improvements that we're going to make across a large spectrum of areas and a large spectrum of employees and needs and functions. So definitely make sure that you're thinking about this too, because again, having the ability to communicate the value that you can deliver to individual business units is going to increasingly make IT more relevant in these conversations, rather than having the business feel that IT isn't delivering on what they want and what they need to get their jobs done. IT needs the business to see them as an enabler and as a trusted resource to be continued and involved in enablement and in actually technology management, because we do see a lot of business units who are having increased budget and spending it in these areas. So again, please ask questions along the way. That's the section I had for you today, and this is me, and I'll turn it over to the rest of the folks. But again, I'll be here till the end, so please ask questions, and we'll get to them as many as we can.
I'd like to suggest that if you want to ask any questions, you could use the chat, and you could expect the responses from the ManageEngine team and Christian came. And also, you could follow us at ManageEngine in Twitter, ME_ITSM, or Facebook in ManageEngine.com and LinkedIn. Now over to ManageEngine presenter, Mr. Anand. Thank you.
Thank you, Christian Kane, for the wonderful, insightful presentation on what the current trends are. So just let me just quickly touch upon what we have in ManageEngine. Like if you see, when you look at the mobile device management, the primary purpose of managing mobile device is to secure the corporate data. In most cases, the primary purpose is to secure the corporate data. So the corporate data could be accessible via, it could be a content that is distributed via a content management tool or via email or some documents that is accessed from mobile device, or it could be through any apps such as Evernote or Dropbox or something which actually transmits the data to the cloud. So while the corporate data could actually from the mobile device move on to the cloud from where it can be stolen or it can be accessed by someone else. The third thing is through the media in the mobile device, like for a voice recording or some camera. So if the data could be taken out from the corporate data could go out via the media available on the mobile device. So these are the three main things. So as long as the device or app is good and the enterprise data is kept safe. So an ideal solution for this could be a device management solution should have mobile device management, it should have mobile application management, it should support BYOD, and it should help in mobile security management. Now let's see by connecting the dots like what ManageEngine offers with regard to mobile device management. So ManageEngine's mobile device solution currently supports iOS and Android devices, from where you can configure and impose policies and restrictions on mobile devices, like to enable enable the use of camera, or disable the use of camera, or any Wi-Fi devices, enabling Wi-Fi. So all sorts of configurations and policies can be imposed from ManageEngine solution. It can track the mobile asset details to the granular levels, the complete details of the assets like configurations and the apps installed. All these things can be accessed. And it can bulk enroll. So like from CSV file or something, you can enroll multiple devices at one go so that you can, it's an easy job. From the security management perspective, the main thing is to impose passcode policies. Like for example, you should be able to impose policies like passcode policies should be applied when a device is accessed outside the network, or if it is a bring your own device. So these things can be done, or when the device is lost or stolen, misplaced. So you'll be able to remotely lock or wipe a device. And when it comes to wiping the data, so it could be either, assuming that if it is a user-owned device, you can only remove the corporate data from the device, meaning without touching the user's information, only the corporate data like email, whatever configurations or policies applied from Desktop Central will alone be removed. And also you will be able to track the current location of the device. In case if you want, it's a stolen device, you want to identify where the device is, you will be able to use the geo-tracking mechanism to find the device. So the next thing is mobile application management. Like you'll be able to distribute apps from a ManageEngine, like it could be a Play Store app or it could be an enterprise app. Any app could be distributed. And when it comes to iOS, if it's a commercial app, you'll be able to integrate with a volume purchase program where the redemption go to automatically map to the devices. So now in the current iOS 7, you will also be able to take back a redemption code and then use it on other devices. So, and you'll be able to blacklist an application or whitelist an application. So whenever an app is discovered, it can be either blacklisted or whitelisted. So you'll be able to manage the apps. The blacklisted apps can be notified, the user to be removed, or the administrator can take action when the blacklisted app is not removed. So on the BYOD front, you'll be able to group the devices like a user-owned device or a corporate device, and then accordingly apply the policy. So whenever you enroll a device, automatically it gets grouped into either user-owned device or employee-owned, a corporate-owned device. And then the policies and restrictions associated to that group will automatically get applied. So in case of BYOD, you can configure policies like to enable passcode or to distribute an an antivirus application. So these things can be imposed immediately upon enrollment, so that you can ensure security related things, or you can impose restrictions and policies. Similarly, when the user leaves the company, you can choose to remove the corporate data from the device automatically, leaving the user's data untouched. So for more details on BYOD, probably you also have a white paper on BYOD from ManageEngine where you can download it from our website. The link is given. You can just visit manageengine.com/MDM to access more details about the product. And we actually did a survey to existing customers to see how well they want the solution to be. Either it should be a standalone solution or it should be integrated with desktop and desktop management solution. So most of the consumers or most of the customers who have responded, or 67% of them told that they would prefer to have a desktop and mobile device management integrated together. So that's what Desktop Central does. So it actually it helps you to manage desktops, laptops, servers, and mobile devices. So desktops, Windows and Mac we support, and in mobile devices, iOS and Android is supported. And the Windows support is coming up. We are announcing the availability for Windows Phone support in the Mobile World Congress later this month. That's it from our side. Probably we can take up the questions now. Let me check what the questions have come. As one question, like, what do you feel is the greatest challenge in securing data that might be attached via an attachment to an email that might go out to a BYOD such as smartphone or tablet? Christian, can you take up this question, please?
Yeah, sure. And sorry, I think maybe I can't see them. Could you just repeat it for me? I missed part of it.
What do you feel is the greatest challenge in securing data that might be attached via an attachment to an email that might go out to a BYOD such as smartphone or tablet?
Well, I mean, there's obviously a number of challenges there, and a lot of that really depends on the platform that you're on, or even the device that you're on in some cases, because there might be the ability to do something like open-in, like we see in iOS 7 that was recently there, where you can actually have some restrictions around which applications can actually open up an attachment, or even where an attachment gets saved, but you don't necessarily, or it's depending on what your choice is around MDM and what you're actually deploying onto those BYOD devices. That's definitely something where you can run into a challenge there, because it could be saved, it could be put into another application and shared that way. So there's really a number of challenges along the way. And again, this isn't necessarily exclusive to something like just mobile devices, right? This has been a challenge with email as a whole. If you provide web access to your employees and they can log in from home, then they still may be able to pass things along to technically a personally owned device, but it might be a PC but not a mobile. So it's not necessarily something that's exclusive to mobile, and really the challenges are pretty widespread. I mean, ultimately, where it comes down to is, is that sensitive information, and is it being put in a place that's either unsecured or even probably more importantly, the company doesn't know that it's even going there. And so having monitoring capabilities there, and also the policies in place to restrict how an attachment maybe can be opened or where it can be saved to, all of those things are really kind of part of the complete picture. Now, again, it's not necessarily something where you're going to be able to tackle every single avenue on every single platform, but it's important to know about that, know what's possible, and also just have conversations with employees about proper use, what they shouldn't be doing, and then you have your policies in place to really take care of any regulatory or compliance issues, but also protect against the path of least resistance. What is the easiest way for employees to do something like that? Can we enable something that either does that better and more easy for them, or can we at least restrict that way, give them education as to why, and provide them a fairly decent alternative? So I don't think there's one kind of major challenge in particular. It's really fairly robust, or broad rather, and it affects multiple devices, not just mobile. But it's important to kind of think about this in the context of all devices, and also the fact that an employee can still walk out with a piece of paper too. They can still, think about it. They can still read something, and then they have that in their head. So you're never going to be able to protect against all avenues. It's really about kind of doing it responsibly, making sure you educate, and then kind of taking care of that path of least resistance while providing a better alternative. Hope that helps.
Thank you, Christian. And there's one other question, like, does the application support BlackBerry? It's for ManageEngine. Currently, we don't support BlackBerry, and we are working on the support probably in by the end of this year, we will be announcing the support for BlackBerry as well. There's one other question for ManageEngine here. You listed that you can purchase and distribute apps through VPP program. Is this possible across multiple mobile platforms such as iOS and Android? Currently, the support for distributing commercial apps is supported only in iOS devices. For Android, we are just working on that. And similarly, there's one other question like, is there an option to disable or wipe laptops such as mobile devices? Like the question actually I understand is, you treat laptops as mobile devices, and in case if it is lost or stolen, disable the laptop or wipe the data from the laptop. I'm not sure whether this is currently available. Christian, is there a solution that does this?
Sorry, is it breaking up again? I think it might be my line. So a solution that actually has application management components?
The question is actually treating a laptop as a mobile device in case a laptop is stolen. Is it possible to delete the device, the data from the laptop?
Yeah, I haven't seen it. Not a solution that can do it both. We do see that some MDM solutions have some light laptop management capabilities, but by and large, what I see from customers overall is that they sort of have a process, a PC or laptop management component in place. And they're sort of treating mobile as a separate silo for now as they sort of get their proficiencies up and get their strategy built. So I don't know of any solution that actually can treat it like that and wipe the device in that scenario. And I think it also just gets much more complicated because of certain requirements that are already set up and in place in terms of really PC security or endpoint security there.
Okay. Okay. There's one other question like, what are the how do you see the diverse mobile device such as wearable gadgets acting as a catalyst for this enterprise mobility management evolution? Christian, can you just handle this? I mean, how the wearable gadgets like Google Glass or watch, how does this play a role in enterprise mobility management?
Yeah, I mean, we see that wearables and really any new form factor that comes out, there's interest in it. People are thinking about it. They're thinking about ways to use it. For the majority of customers, they're not necessarily at that point yet. We see most who are still really trying to take advantage of tablets and smartphones to their full advantage there. And now part of that, if you have those wearables that do leverage the same operating system, then your management solution is probably going to be able to do some of the same things on that. Now, there's also going to be other use cases that come up in those scenarios, maybe with wearables, and those might have to be treated a little bit differently. I think we don't see the adoption or the desire yet, and therefore, because there's so much more to do around sort of app management, data management, we see the majority of customers still interested in that component and vendors as well, so those components haven't necessarily been built out. But my expectation will be is that as wearables do become more relevant, start getting used more often, we'll see more management capabilities available for them, and more solutions in terms of MDM that do kind of focus around it. Right now we do see a little bit of field service, ruggedized scenarios or scenarios where maybe you need hands-free, where some of the wearables do start becoming maybe more interesting there. But right now, fairly low adoption in a corporate setting. There's still a lot of work that has to be done around it, but my expectation would be by the time that most are ready for it, that there will be adequate management options, and it will probably be in that same management tool that you use for your mobile devices today.
Okay. check if there's any question like. There's one question like, how does the ManageEngine solution differentiate corporate versus personal data? So basically what we do in case of an employee-owned device, we can, when the employee leaves the company, we can do a corporate wipe, meaning any policy, configuration, or anything, any restrictions that was imposed using the solution will alone be reverted. It will not touch any contacts or any videos or photographs, any photos or nothing is touched. So all configurations, policies set from the desktop central solution will alone be reverted. So that's what we mean by corporate wipe. There's one other question like, to what extent does allowing BYOD require a redesign or rethink of the network infrastructure? I think it's, Christian, can you just handle this? I mean,
yeah, sure.
Implementing, allowing BYOD, to what extent it requires a redesign or rethinking of the network infrastructure?
You know, I think that we see many companies who haven't yet tackled the networking component yet. I guess that's a good way to start it. You know, it tends to be something that's sort of secondary in general. But we do see more companies who are starting to think about it, and really why they are is kind of twofold. One, it's because they provide, obviously, access maybe, or they don't have access restrictions. And so as long as the user can authenticate and they use their same credentials, then they can get access to it. And then they're using a personal device on that company network. And so with that in mind, you know, we've seen a lot of companies say, well, we do have a guest network set up. Maybe we'll tell employees BYOD devices, they need to go to that. They need to go to there at that guest network. But then you sort of get into a scenario where that they may need access on those devices to separate, or to get, they maybe need more access to back-end infrastructure, or you have your network impacted because people are using their personal devices for personal usage. And in that scenario, then, you know, potentially you're having your bandwidth challenges, or you're having your traffic, you know, become a problem. So we definitely see some of that being a component first and foremost. You know, another thing that's also to keep in mind is that if you have a large workforce and you're rolling out more and more applications, well, if you have a new application that comes out and you're pushing it out to 1,000 employees, you know, that's a significant amount of traffic, significant amount of bandwidth to push out that application if it's something where you're hosting it internally, or where somebody's on your Wi-Fi network and they're all downloading simultaneously if an announcement goes out. So these are definitely some of the issues that are coming up in terms of network capacity, and just sort of how the network relates to really increased device usage. Because I mean, beyond everything else, you're just seeing more and more devices being added. You're not seeing any fewer devices in the majority of cases. So that's definitely something to keep in mind too. Is that, you know, if somebody brings in a personal device, you know, it's another piece on the network. And the last piece really concerning security is, well, if you're not managing that person's device, and it is a personal device, but they still can connect to your network, you know, what happens if they have a malicious app on there? You know, what happens if that device has been compromised, and then that now has access to back-end systems? So there's definitely security components in that as well. You know, still, I think some of these things are still being figured out, but the network is going to be a significant piece of a significant challenge for most companies to really have a enabled workforce that has a lot of mobile devices, a lot of access, a lot of applications. So definitely, you know, keep that in mind as you're thinking about implications for, you know, rolling out a BYOD program, or even just rolling out more mobile device access.
One other question for ManageEngine. Is the pricing based on number of devices managed, or it is flat price? Yeah, the pricing is based on the number of devices, and the volume discount is available when the volume increases. Probably you can just check the website. It is publicly listed what the pricing is. It starts at $15 per device annually. I think the questions have stopped coming.
So thank you, Christian, for handling the viewers' questions, and thank you, Anand, for handling questions from ManageEngine side. I guess it was a very delightful session we had today. And once again, we thank Christian for coming behalf of Forrester and acting as a guest speaker for the show. I thank everyone. And while viewers, those who have missed the starting part or those who want to view the webinar again, we will send you an immediate mail, which would be tomorrow or day after tomorrow, and you can view the recorded webinar there. I hope everyone had insights and required information from this webinar. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks everybody for the time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Christian. Thank you very much.
Thank you.